Okay. So today we are going to look at the other five properties of S3 that we were talking about previously. So just a small revision as to what the previous five properties were. So we started off with versioning. So versioning, we saw that it enables us to have multiple versions of the same object within a bucket, and we can only enable and suspend versioning. We will not be able to disable it. The second property that we saw was server access logging, as to who accessed that particular bucket, and then what was the bucket name that he accessed, what was the request time, what was the action, whether it was a get action or a delete action, and then what was the response status, whether it had an error code, and so on. So we created a target S3 bucket for storing all our server access logs, and we had a prefix. Okay. So when it comes to static website hosting, we ensured that we had only static files in terms of HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, and we didn't have any server-side scripts such as PHP, JSP, or ASP.NET, and so on. Okay, so to create a static website hosting, the only prerequisite is that all the objects within the bucket should have public read access. So it can be given through a bucket policy or through bucket ACL also. And we also viewed the website from the auto-generated endpoint that was provided to us by AWS. So AWS formed that endpoint by using the bucket name, using S3-website and hyphen with the region code, and then amazonaws.com. And we can optionally configure our error.html file too. So when it came to object level logging, we saw that it was different from server access logging, because server access logging gave in details regarding who accessed that particular bucket, what was the action that he wanted to do, and what was the bucket name, and so on. But then when it came to object level logging, we described that it was API actions on the object, API actions on the bucket. So something along the lines of get object, delete object, and put object API actions. So we will be able to go ahead and create a trail using a second service called as CloudTrail, which was used to track all the API activity in the AWS account. And we chose across all regions, and we chose all actions. Okay. So, you wanted to elaborate on Lambda. So one thing we'll do is, since we are concentrating on S3, we'll probably look at Lambda when it comes to the Lambda section of the lecture. Okay. So that would be more easy for me to go ahead and explain more about Lambda and as to how Lambda works. Okay. Cool. Okay. So then we saw that we will be able to store our logs in an S3 bucket, as well as we'll be able to store our logs in a CloudWatch log group also. And then when we enabled the CloudTrail across all the buckets, we saw that any new buckets also that were created will also be enabled with this particular setting. And then when we spoke about encryption having two types. One was being using server-side encryption using S3 keys, which AWS does the encryption in the background before saving that object to the disk. And then AWS also does the decryption when we want to download the object. That is the same case when it comes to the key management service also. So, and then later we also saw as to how to use the key management service to create our own keys. Okay, so if suppose when it comes to your put request, when you upload a new object, you provide any encryption information, Amazon S3 uses that particular encryption information. If not, it uses the default encryption settings on the particular object, okay, that has been set on the bucket. So today we are going to concentrate on the other five. So the other five properties are object lock. We will start with object lock, and then we will move on to transfer acceleration. We will look at events. We will also look at requester pace, and then there's one more thing that I'm missing. So what was there? Yeah, we will also look at how tags help us in terms of cost allocation. So we will start off with object lock. So AWS brought this recently. I would say probably in the year 2019 only it was brought about. So this object lock feature, it allows you to store objects using that write once read many model. So it's called as the worm model, or write once read many model. So you can generally use it to prevent an object from being deleted or overwritten for a fixed amount of time or indefinitely. Okay, so Amazon S3 object lock helps you meet certain regulatory requirements. We have seen before that they follow a lot of compliance and regulations policies. Okay, so this is one such feature that they brought about to follow certain regulatory requirements that require this worm storage, or simply add another layer of protection against your object changes and deletion. Okay, so we saw that in S3 we will be able to protect our objects through two ways. One is through versioning and the other one is through MFA delete. Okay, but this one also adds another layer of security for your objects in terms of locking them for a specific period of time or for a retention period. So object lock has been assessed by Cohasset Associates for use in environments that are subject to these regulations, like FINRA regulations, CTCC regulations, and so on. So it provides two ways for us to manage object retention. One is called as the retention period and the other one is called as legal holds. So retention period specifies a fixed period of time during which an object remains locked. So during this period, your object is worm protected. So it can be read many times, but it cannot be overwritten or deleted. Okay. But then when it comes to a legal hold, it provides the same properties and protection as that of the retention period, but it has no expiration date. Instead, a legal hold remains in place until you explicitly remove it. So legal holds are independent from retention period. So all you need to understand that object lock has been brought about to ensure a second layer of protection for all of your objects within that bucket to prevent them from deletion and updation, because it follows the worm model, which is write once and read many. So there are two types of object lock. One which you need to understand is the retention period, and the other one is a legal hold. So retention period, you have to provide a fixed period of time, and within which, I mean, you will not be able to go ahead and delete or update your object or overwrite your object. But when it comes to a legal hold, it does not have a retention period, but it has no expiration date. Instead, a legal hold remains in place until you explicitly remove that legal hold. Okay. So one note to understand over here is that before you enable object lock, you need to have bucket versioning enabled on that particular bucket. So there are two types of lock modes that we are going to describe, or two types of retention modes, in fact. So one is called as the governance mode and the other one is called as the compliance mode. It's very easy to understand because the governance mode, users cannot overwrite or delete any of the object versions or alter its lock settings until they have special permissions. So with governance mode, you can protect your objects against deletion by most of the users, but you can still grant some users permission to alter the retention settings or even delete the object if necessary. Okay, this is called as the governance mode. The only difference between governance mode and the compliance mode is that in the compliance mode, a protected object version cannot be overwritten or deleted by any user, nor even by the root user in the AWS account. So when an object is logged in compliance mode, its retention mode cannot be changed. The retention period cannot be shortened. Whatever retention period you have given at the start, it cannot be changed nor can it be shortened. So compliance mode ensures that an object version cannot be overwritten or deleted for a duration of that retention period. Okay, so these are the two types of retention modes that we can describe. One is the governance mode and the other one is the compliance mode. The only difference between governance and compliance mode is that in the governance mode, you can provide certain permissions for a user to go ahead and alter the retention settings or delete the object if necessary. But in the compliance mode, if you have set it once, it's written in stone. You will not be able to change the retention period, nor will you be able to shorten the retention period. So compliance mode ensures that you cannot overwrite or delete for the duration of that retention period, that particular object. Okay. So this is called as object lock. Okay. The next setting that we are going to look at, or the next property that we are going to look at, is tags. Tags is very easy to understand. In one way, it's just a key value pair that you allocate to a particular resource. So to track the storage cost or any other criteria for your individual projects or group of projects, you can label your S3 buckets using cost allocation tags. A cost allocation tag is nothing but a key value pair that you associate with a bucket. Something along the lines of, this bucket is used for this particular project. So project name, and this is the name of the project. And that tag is associated with that particular bucket. So after you activate cost allocation tags, AWS uses these tags to organize your resource cost based on your cost allocation report. So on the billing console, we will be able to view our cost allocation report. And in that particular report, you will be able to view your cost allocation tags. So it can only be used to label buckets. So AWS provides two types of cost allocation tags. One is an AWS generated tag itself, and the other one is the user defined tag. So AWS defines, creates, and applies their generated tag after you have created the S3 bucket. Okay. But then you can define your own user defined tags on your S3 bucket. So this is called as cost allocation tags, or you can just call it as tags itself. So ultimately you use tags, which is a key value pair, to associate your S3 bucket with a particular project and so on, so that at a later point of time, when you look at your cost allocation report, you will be able to find out as to what is the cost for this particular bucket and so on, based on the project that you have labeled it with. So the third property that we are going to look at today is called as transfer acceleration. So S3 transfer acceleration enables fast, easy, and secure transfers of files over long distances between your client and an S3 bucket. So transfer acceleration takes advantage of Amazon's CloudFront globally distributed edge locations. So when we looked at AWS's global infrastructure, we looked at edge locations. So which were used for caching purposes. There were around 187 edge locations in the entire world that Amazon has set up. So transfer acceleration utilizes edge locations in the background. So as the data arrives at a particular edge location, data is routed to Amazon S3 to that particular bucket over an optimized network path. So when you enable transfer acceleration and you upload an object to that S3 bucket, it is not actually uploaded to the S3 bucket. It is uploaded to an edge location that is closest to the client. So from that particular edge location, the object is routed through a network of other edge locations, which goes to the S3 bucket finally. Okay. So you might want to use transfer acceleration for various reasons. Some of the reasons are you have customers that upload to a centralized bucket across the entire world, and then you may transfer gigabytes or terabytes of data on a regular basis. And when you're unable to utilize all of your available bandwidth over the internet when uploading to S3. So these are some of the cases that you may use transfer acceleration. So ultimately we need to understand that it utilizes edge locations in the background. So when you upload an object, it is uploaded to the edge location, and then over an optimized network path from that edge location, it is going across multiple other edge locations to an S3 bucket that you have created. Okay. So a good scenario over here is, so you can point your put object, where when you go ahead and upload an object, the action is called as put. So you can point your put object and get object request to the S3 accelerated endpoint domain name after you enable transfer acceleration. So for example, let's say that you currently have a REST API that you have written, and using put object, you upload an object to the S3 bucket. So generally the host name is going to be mybucket.s3.amazonaws.com, where my bucket can be replaced with your bucket name. But then to accelerate your put request, you can simply change your host name in the request to mybucket.s3-accelerate.amazonaws.com. All you need to do is just change the host name for your object to be uploaded to the nearest edge location, and then over an optimized network path, it will be uploaded to the destination S3 bucket. So to go back to using the standard upload speed, you can simply change your name back to your bucket name.s3.amazonaws.com. So this is how you use transfer acceleration when you work with your applications. And then the fourth property for today that we are going to describe is called as events. So you can enable certain S3 bucket events to send notification message to a destination whenever certain events occur. So what are some of those events and what are some of those destinations? So some of those events are whenever you create an object, whenever you delete an object, whenever you restore an object from a different storage class. So a good example for restoration of an object event is when you restore an object from a Glacier storage class to S3 storage class. And then finally, we saw that reduced redundancy storage was a storage class that is going to be decommissioned, but then it is used for a scenario wherein you are going to go ahead and create an meme website, but then even if you lose some of your objects, it's okay, because you will be able to go ahead and recreate your object at a later point of time. So even for reduced redundancy storage object lost event, we will be able to trigger notifications. Okay. So the four different ways that, for 4 different events that for which you can trigger a notification is an object created event. You can do for an object delete event. You can do it for a restore object event, like in the sense when you restore an object from Glacier storage class to an S3 storage class, you will be able to get an event notification. And then even when you use the reduced redundancy storage for any scenario and then your object is lost, you will be able to go ahead and trigger an event. So then what are the destinations that you can trigger these events to? So the destinations are, one is you can get a notification using the simple notification service of Amazon. You can trigger this particular events message to go to an SQS queue. And then finally, you can also trigger a Lambda function. Okay. So these are three different destinations that S3 events right now supports. Okay. So you need to understand that whenever you put an object or whenever you delete an object or whenever you restore a particular object from a different storage class or whenever you are using reduced redundancy storage and your object is lost, you will be able to trigger notification messages to be sent to these following destinations. It can be to Amazon SNS or to Amazon SQS or to Lambda function. Okay. So we will look at one such scenario today. So we are going to go ahead and look at this use case wherein whenever a user deletes an object or creates an object in S3, the administrator should be notified in respect to mail address of the same API action. Okay. So we are going to create an S3 bucket. We are going to create an SNS topic. We are going to subscribe the administrator's mail address to the SNS topic. And then we are going to confirm the subscription in the mail. And then we are going to modify the topic policy to use the S3 bucket and the topic ARN. And then we are going to enable events on the S3 bucket, choose the certain API action such as deletion or creation. And then we are going to choose the SNS topic. So after doing this configuration, what is going to happen? The end result is going to be that whenever a user goes ahead and creates an object or deletes an object, we will be able to get a notification in our mail as to what is the source IP of the person who has done that, what was the object that he has uploaded, or what was the object that he has deleted, and so on. Okay. So this is the example of a topic policy when it comes to SNS. Okay. So in this topic policy, we can see that we have effect as allow, the principal service being s3.amazonaws.com, and we are publishing to that particular topic. And you can see that the resource is going to be that topic's ARN, and then the condition is going to be our particular S3 bucket. So we are going to monitor this S3 bucket using SNS, and each and every time an object is going to be put or deleted in this S3 bucket, we will be able to publish a notification to that particular topic and to the subscription that has been done to that particular topic, which is going to be the administrator's email address. Okay. And then finally, the fifth property or the last property of AWS S3 is called as requester pace. It is in theory only. Okay. So this requester pace, once we enable this setting, what happens is that the bucket owners generally pay for all of the S3 storage and the data transfer associated with this particular bucket. The bucket owner, however, can configure a bucket to be a requester pace bucket, which means that with requester pace, the requester who is requesting for the object is going to pay for the cost of the request and the data download from that bucket. But ultimately, the bucket owner is going to pay for the cost of storing that data in the S3 bucket. So anyone who accesses that particular object from the S3 bucket is going to pay for that access and for the data that they download. But then ultimately, the bucket owner only pays for storing that particular data in that S3 bucket. So typically you can configure buckets to be requester pace when you want to share your data, but not incur charges associated with other people accessing your data. So for example, you might use requester pace when making available large data sets such as zip files or reference data or web crawling data and so on. So when the requester assumes an IAM role prior to making the request, the account in which that user is residing within or to which the role belongs to is charged for that particular request. So let's say I have an AWS account where I'm creating the bucket. So therefore I am the bucket owner. And then I have uploaded a lot of zip files to that particular bucket. And then let's say another AWS accounts user is assuming an IAM role to access my AWS account where I have the bucket to access my data within that bucket. That means I will not be paying for the request that he is doing. When I enable requester pace, he will be paying for that request and for the data download that he is doing from my bucket. And ultimately, I'll be paying for the cost of the storing of that particular data or storing of that particular zip files. Okay. So this is called as requester pace. It is only enabled on that particular bucket. You can read about this in more detail with AWS documentation. So today we have looked at 5 different properties, starting with object lock. So it uses the write once read many model, and you can use it to prevent an object from being deleted or overwritten for a fixed amount of time or indefinitely. So there are 2 types of periods called as retention period and legal hold. Retention period specifies a fixed time during which an object remains logged. So during this period, your object is worm protected, cannot be overwritten or deleted. A legal hold is nothing but it provides the same protection as that of a retention period, but it has no expiration date. So until and unless you disable legal hold, it will be in place. Your objects will be protected. So the only prerequisite for object lock is bucket versioning should be enabled. So there are two types of retention modes that we have described. One is being the governance mode and the other one being the compliance mode. So in the governance mode, you can provide certain IAM users permissions to go ahead and change the retention settings or even delete the object if necessary. But in the compliance mode, you will not be able to do anything if you enable it. For that particular retention period, your object cannot be overwritten or deleted, nor your retention period can be shortened or extended. So tags, we saw it's very simple. So you associate a key value pair to your S3 bucket. And this is very useful in terms of cost allocation, because if suppose for a particular project, I want to look at what was the cost for S3, I'll be able to look at those respective S3 buckets that I've associated this cost allocation tag with. So let's say, for example, I say project name and the project name's value is caliber or something like that. Okay. So when it comes to transfer acceleration, it's mainly used to accelerate your speed of get request and put request to your S3 bucket. So ultimately, when you enable transfer acceleration, you get an endpoint which is called as mybucket.s3-accelerate.amazonaws.com. So using this particular accelerated endpoint in your application, you'll be able to upload objects to an S3 bucket. And you can use transfer acceleration for different case scenarios when you transfer large amounts of data, or when you have a lot of customers that upload all of your data to a centralized S3 bucket across the world. And then you can also utilize transfer acceleration when you're unable to utilize all of your available bandwidth over the internet. Okay. So what happens in the background is your data is arriving at a particular edge location. And then from that edge location over an optimized network path, your data is going to be uploaded to the destination S3 bucket. And then when it comes to events, we saw that we can send notifications for some of the following events when it comes to an object creation or an object deletion, or restoring object events from a different storage class like Glacier to S3 storage class, or S3 standard, or S3 IA, so on. And when it comes to reduce redundancy storage, if suppose your object is lost in that particular storage class, you'll be able to get notification. And these notifications can be for different destinations. One can be to Amazon SNS, the other one can be to an SQS queue, and the third one is you can trigger a Lambda function. And one case scenario that we are going to look at is whenever a user deletes and creates an object in an S3 bucket, we will be notified of that in our respective email address. So this is the topic policy that we are going to apply on the SNS side. So this topic policy includes the bucket's name or the bucket's ARN, for which we are going to enable the event notification. And then the topic ARN that we are going to mention. And then the action is going to be to publish to that particular topic, which means that people who are subscribed to that particular topic will receive that email. And when it comes to requester pace, we saw that when we have two AWS accounts, one AWS account where the bucket is there and the bucket owner has created that bucket and has a lot of files in that. And then you have a second AWS account wherein you have a user assuming an IAM role to access this first account's S3 bucket. He will be paying for the request charges as well as the data download charges, but the bucket owner will be paying for storing that particular data. So it's just one radio button that you have to enable when it comes to requester pace. So let's go ahead and see all this in demo. Okay. So we will go ahead and open up S3. I have my AWS console open over here. So we are going to open up S3. So some of the buckets that we created yesterday are still there. And one thing that I didn't show you yesterday was that the server access logs took a lot of time to get accumulated into that S3 bucket. So right now you can see that server access logs are there within this S3 bucket. And when you click over here, you can see that it has been prefixed with static website. So each and every time that you access your static website bucket, your server access logs will be delivered to this server access logs bucket. So you can just download any one of your access logs and look at the content of it. But then today we are going to concentrate on object lock. So object lock, one thing to notice, it can only be enabled when you create the bucket and not after you have created the bucket. So we are going to create a bucket. We are going to create this bucket with the name called as Akshay 2395 object lock. And I'm going to place it in the Northern Virginia region. I'm going to click on next. And you can see over here, object level logging is over here, but then advanced settings, object lock is there. So you will not be able to click this checkbox because object lock requires bucket versioning to be enabled. So I'm going to enable versioning, and then I'm going to enable object lock. So you can see over here, it has given a small description for us. If you need to prevent objects from being deleted to help ensure data integrity and regulatory compliance. So after you enable it, anyone with the appropriate permission can put objects into this particular bucket, and you might be blocked from deleting the objects and the bucket also. So like I mentioned, when you use the compliance related retention period, which we saw in the slide, when we saw compliance related retention period, even the bucket owner, right? Let's go back. Yeah. Even including the root user will not be able to go ahead and delete the particular bucket and the object during the retention period. Okay. So we are going to go ahead and click on next, disable this block all public access, click on next and click on create bucket. So once you create the bucket, you can see over here, it has been displayed over here. So you can see under properties, object lock will be enabled right now. You can click on this and you can see we got both of our retention period settings. We got our enable governance mode setting and we got our compliance mode setting. So when we click on enable governance mode, you can specify the retention period over here and the number of days. When you click on compliance mode also, you can do it over here. But the only difference is that your root user and any other user cannot go ahead and overwrite or delete some of your objects in the S3 bucket. I mean, all of your objects in the S3 bucket. When you enable governance mode, you can provide certain IAM users to go ahead and delete the object or even change this retention period setting. So we are going to enable compliance mode and I'm going to enable this to be of 1 day time. So for 1 day, I will not be able to go ahead and delete any of the objects or overwrite any of the objects in this S3 bucket. Let's just test it out. So click on save. It's asking for us to type confirm. I'm going to click on confirm. Object lock has been enabled. So go to overview, click on upload, click on add files. We are going to upload our index.html file, which we had yesterday. Upload this file. So the file is uploaded. Let's try to go ahead and delete this file. Click on actions, click on delete, click on delete. The object is deleted. Under show versioning, you can see that a delete marker has been placed on this particular object. Okay, so if you go ahead and try to delete this particular object right now, I badly hope it works out because object lock has been enabled. So if we go ahead and try to delete this object with show versioning enabled, let's try to do this. One error has been displayed over here only because when you click on view details, access has been denied only because object lock has been enabled on your bucket. So it does not delete that object in the S3 bucket. So for 1 day, you will not be able to delete that object. Okay. So this is in terms of object lock as to how it works with regulatory and compliance requirements. Okay. So you can try even to update the same object. That will also not work because overwriting and even deletion is not allowed when you enable object lock. Okay. Even if you want to try it out, you can try it out. Delete did not work. So obviously I think that even overwriting the same object will not work. Okay. So we will go ahead and look at the next setting, which is called as, what did we look at the next one? So after object lock, we looked at tags. Okay. So let's take any normal S3 bucket that we have, which we created yesterday, static website bucket. Let's go to properties. Let's scroll below. And just for you to know that you can enable object lock only when you create the bucket, not after you have created the bucket. So even if you click on object lock, it can only be enabled when the bucket is created. Okay. So you will not be able to enable this for a bucket that has already been created. So when you click on tags, you will be able to add a tag. Tag is nothing but a key value pair. So I'm saying I'm associating this bucket with the project called as Caliber. So when you generate your cost allocation report in the billing console, you will be able to view this particular bucket with this particular tag associated with it. So it's good to always associate tags with all of your resources in the AWS world. Okay. So the next one that we are going to look at is transfer acceleration. So since this is an static website hosted bucket, let's also enable transfer acceleration and let's go ahead and compare the speeds also. But then you can see over here, you can see that the endpoint has been generated. So Akshay 2395 static website dot s3 accelerate dot amazonaws.com. So generally when you are uploading your objects or when you're doing a put request to an S3 bucket without transfer acceleration enabled, you will generally be uploading to the host name called Akshay 2395 static website dot amazonaws.com. You will not have S3 accelerate, but then when you have enabled transfer acceleration, you will be able to upload to this particular endpoint, and through an optimized network path of edge locations, your data will be uploaded to this destination S3 bucket. So click on enable, click on save. So you can enable transfer acceleration. Ultimately, all that you have to do is just click on enable and save. And similarly, when it comes to versioning, you can only suspend versioning. Even when it comes to transfer acceleration, you can only suspend transfer acceleration. So this is the speed test. Okay. So you can see over here, it shows a comparison. So you can see an S3 direct upload, and you can see a transfer accelerated upload. So you can see how much faster it is in the Northern Virginia region. It's 90% faster. Similarly, in all the other regions, you can check over here. It will start uploading a sample object with a direct upload as well as a transfer accelerated upload. So you can see over here, San Francisco region right now. Let this probably complete, and then we'll move on to the next property. So similarly, you can just open this up and look at it. Okay. So direct upload, it'll take a longer time, but when it comes to a transfer accelerated upload, it utilizes CloudFront's edge location. So you can see that it's 164% faster. So similarly, when it comes to Oregon, Dublin, so I'll just keep this page open. We will look at all the other properties and come back to this page once it has completed for all the regions. Okay. So that is essentially transfer acceleration. But then when we look at the next property, which is called as event notification, we are going to do this case scenario that we described. Okay. So the case scenario that we described was to first go ahead and create an S3 bucket. So let's go ahead and create an S3 bucket. So I'm going to say Akshay 2395 hyphen event notif. Okay. I'm going to place it in the Northern Virginia region. I'm going to click on next. I'm going to click on next. I'm going to disable the setting, click on next, and click on create bucket. So once we have created this event notification bucket, we are going to go ahead and create an SNS topic. So I'm going to open up SNS in a new tab. So ensure that you are also in the Northern Virginia region when it comes to the SNS, okay, because our bucket is in the Northern Virginia region. So we are going to click on topics. We are going to click on create topic. I'm going to give this topic a name, S3 event notifs. I'm going to use the display name as S3 event. And I'm going to leave all this same, all these as default, and then go ahead and create the topic. So once you have created the topic, you will be able to create a subscription to this topic. I'm going to create a subscription. I'm going to select the endpoint or the protocol that I'm going to use to be email. I'm going to present my email address over here. I'm going to click on create subscription. So now I'll be able to get a mail in my email. So you can see over here under the S3 event notifs, you can see under subscription, it's saying pending confirmation. So I can go back to my email. You can see I have received an email from AWS. I have to confirm this subscription. This is very important. Most of the people miss this setting. I have to confirm the subscription. Once you have confirmed the subscription, you will get a display like this. Go back to SNS, just refresh this page. Status is confirmed. Before it was in pending confirmation, now the status is confirmed. So the next thing that we have to do is go ahead and modify our topic policy. You can see that we have subscribed an administrator's mail address to the SNS topic. We have confirmed the subscription in the mail. We are now going to do step 5 and 6. We are going to modify the topic policy to use this particular topic policy. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and click on my S3 event notifs. I'm going to click on, going to click on this and then click on the access policy. You can see that we have an access policy over here. Let's see if we can go ahead and edit this access policy. We are going to click on this, edit. We are going to click on access policy and we can go ahead and present our own access policy over here. Okay. So we are going to grab that access policy from AWS documentation. So AWS S3 event notification SNS topic policy. That's how you search in Google. The first link will have the access policy, configuring Amazon S3 event notification. When you scroll down entirely in this page, you will be able to get the access policy from here. Copy the access policy, go back to SNS, take this all out, paste the access policy. All that you need to do over here is take the topic ARN. So what I'm going to do is open SNS again in a different tab, grab the S3's event notification buckets ARN. So when you click on permissions, click on bucket policy, you will get the ARN over here. Copy the ARN, take the ARN and paste it over here. You have to get the topic ARN over here. So open this tab, click on topic, click on the topic or grab the ARN from here. Grab the topic ARN. So you need two ARNs. One is the topic ARN, the other one is the bucket ARN, and all the other actions are the same. Okay, let's go ahead and click on save changes. So your changes were saved. The access policy is correct. It has detected the proper access policy. The next step that we need to do is just go ahead and enable event notification on the bucket level. So going back to the bucket on which we wanted to enable event notification, scroll down, click on events, click on events, click on add notification. So you can see all of your events over here, right? Some of the events that we described were put and post, which was object creation. We also saw object deletion, delete marker created and permanently deleted, and all object delete events. We also saw restoration events in terms of Glacier to S3 or Glacier to S3 IA and so on. So restoration events are there, and even reduce redundancy storage object lost events are there. So we are going to go ahead and do all object create events, all object delete events. We are going to go ahead and choose restore events as well as object in RRS lost. So just to ensure that we have all the actions completely covered, you can just go ahead and enable all of these. But then all object create events will also go with put and post. So what we are going to do is we are going to just disable all of this, and all object delete events also include permanently deleted and delete marker created. So we are just going to go with these respective events. And you can also present a prefix and a suffix if you want to. So if suppose I want to find out all the JPG files that were deleted, I want to get a mail when all the JPG files are deleted, I can present a suffix, and a comma separated suffix is also possible. So .jpg, comma, .png, and so on. And when it comes to prefix, I can ensure that a particular folder is only being monitored. So within that particular folder, if some of the files are being deleted, I'll get an event notification, or I'll get a notification in my mail right now. Okay. So these are optional settings, but then this is a mandatory setting as to where you want to send it. So we saw that the destination can be an SNS topic, it can be an SQS queue, or it can be a Lambda function. Right now, an SNS topic is what we have. So click on SNS topic, and then under SNS topic, it's not showing because we haven't reloaded this page. So we'll go ahead and reload this page because we have created the SNS topic over there. We are just reloading this page. So go back to events, click on add notification, choose all object create, all object delete, multi-part upload, object in RRS lost, and restoration. We are going to select SNS topic, and you can see over here, all the topics are listed. So S3 even notifies our topic. Click on save. So it says configuration overlap, configurations on the same bucket cannot share a common event type. So this is generally the error that you will face. Okay. So what we will do is we will remove some of these. Okay. And then we will try to see if it works. And then we have to put a a name for this event. So we are going to call this as S3 event notification. Okay. All object create events alone we are going to choose right now. We will see whether it works. Okay. Click on save. So it has worked. So all we have to do is give a name. Okay, I just forgot to give a name. So what we are going to do is we are going to just go ahead and edit this, and also include all the other events. Okay, all object delete, restoration, complete events also. Click on save. Okay, so our event notification is done. So until and unless you present the topic policy on the SNS side, the topic policy that we manipulated, right? Until and unless you present this topic policy, the event notification will keep saying the same error. Okay, so you have to go across this error, means you have to present the topic policy in the same manner that I have given. Okay, so now let's go ahead and upload an object and see whether we receive a mail, right? So click on upload, click on add files, the same index.html file I'm going to add. Okay, click on open, click on upload. So once this has uploaded, just go ahead and look at your mail. You can see over here, you got a mail over here. So you can see over here in this mail, you can see that the key is index.html. The source IP address who did that is my source IP address. And yeah, so these are all the JSON format related details that you will get. So probably I'm going to just copy this from my mail, may not be in a readable format. I'm going to open in a new tab JSON validator. And I'm going to just paste this over there. So for us to view the different fields, paste this, validate JSON. So you can see over here, the event source is AWS S3. The region is AWS East 1. The event name is object created. The request parameters is my source IP address. You can see the response elements also. And also under S3, you can see some of the details in regard to what is the name of the bucket, okay, and what is the ARN of that particular bucket. And when it comes to the object level, you will be able to see what is the size of that object and what was the object name, I mean the key name that we uploaded. Okay, so these are all the details that you will get in your mail. So now you can understand that whenever a person in your organization goes ahead and deletes an object or so on, you will be able to receive a mail. So always event notifications is good practice to be enabled on your bucket. Okay, so this is one scenario that I wanted to show. So you can try out event notification with triggering a Lambda function or storing your particular message in an SQS queue and so on. Okay, but right now this is the most simplest configuration when it comes to receiving an email using SNS. Okay, so just to reiterate on this entire process that we did, we created an S3 bucket, we created an SNS topic, we subscribed the administrator's mail address to the SNS topic, and we confirmed the subscription in the mail. And then finally, we modified the SNS topic policy to use the S3 bucket and the topic ARN. We pasted the S3 bucket ARN and the topic ARN. And then finally, we enabled events on the bucket. We gave the event a name, and then we chose our respective API actions and then the SNS topic. Okay. So this is in terms of event notification. And the final property that I would like to show you is, so when it comes to, when we will go back to the same website S3 bucket. Okay. And if suppose I would like other people to pay for the data access that they do and the request access that they do, we saw that the final property of an S3 bucket is called as requester pays. So the requester, instead of the bucket owner, goes ahead and pays for the request and the data transfer. So it can be two AWS accounts, or it can be generally a user of your particular organization. So anyone, it could be anyone in terms of an AWS account or a user in your organization who is accessing your particular S3 bucket's data. So he will be paying for that data transfer cost and the request cost. But ultimately, the bucket owner, who is me, will be paying for the storage that I use in this particular bucket. So all the files that I store, the storage cost is taken by the bucket owner. So all you need to do is just click on requester pays and enable requester pays. That's the maximum that you need to do. Okay, so click on save. So these are all the advanced settings of an S3 bucket. Previously, we saw these settings: versioning, server access logging, static website hosting, object level logging, and default encryption. Today, we saw about object lock. We saw about the governance and the compliance retention periods. We saw that we were not able to delete any objects for 1 day time period. Until the retention period is completed, I will not be able to delete that particular object in the bucket. And then we saw tags, we saw transfer acceleration, we saw events and requester pays. So just to show you that the transfer acceleration page would have finished right now. So you can see that Oregon itself is 56% faster when you're using transfer acceleration. Dublin is 35% faster. Frankfurt is 153% faster. Tokyo is 53% faster. Seoul is 101% faster. Singapore is 12% slower. Sydney is 147% faster. Sao Paulo is 29% faster. Mumbai is 17% slower. Ohio is 25% faster. Canada Central is 65% faster, and London is 52% faster. So what object is being uploaded to this bucket is this static website bucket is present in the Northern Virginia region, right? So then what they do is, in the background, this speed comparison, they upload an object from the Northern Virginia region itself to the Northern Virginia region bucket. They upload an object from San Francisco, from Oregon, from Dublin to this Northern Virginia region bucket, and they see as to how fast it is when you do a direct upload and when you do a transfer accelerated upload. So when you upload an object from the Singapore region, they say that the direct upload is faster than the transfer accelerated upload. So it can be possible. Even when you upload it from Mumbai, it can be possible. Depending on their edge locations, depending on the network transfer speed from their particular edge locations, it could happen that it's slower also when you're using a transfer accelerated upload compared to a direct upload. Okay. And when you do it from other regions such as Sydney, or when you do it from Frankfurt or San Francisco, it's much faster. Okay. So you can see the description over here. The speed checker uses multi-part uploads to transfer a file from your browser to various S3 regions with and without S3 transfer acceleration. It compares the speed results and shows the percentage difference for every region. So in general, the farther away you are from an S3 region, the higher the speed improvement you can expect from using transfer acceleration, because it utilizes
the globally distributed CloudFront edge locations in the background. So if you see a similar speed result with and without, your upload bandwidth or system constraint might be limiting your speed. It's very much possible. Okay. So this is what I wanted to say today regarding the other 5 properties. So next Saturday, we will look at the management tab of S3, where we will do only these 2 configurations called as lifecycle configurations and replication or cross-region replication for disaster recovery scenarios. Okay. So thank you for attending. I'll go ahead and stop the recording. Okay. So I'll pause the recording. We are opening up for questions.